From the KSL Broadcast House, this is Sunday Edition with Doug Wright.
And a good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Sunday Edition. Today, coming to you from the Utah State Capitol building. And even though you're watching this on Sunday morning, this is actually Friday afternoon. And we're going to be talking with legislators. We're going to be talking about some of the last-minute issues. But boy, more than 1,000 bill requests were made during this year's legislative session, and more than 400 of those were heard and have been passed. And now Governor Spencer Cox has until March 23rd to sign or veto bills from this session. And of course, many of the bills, this has been kind of a tradition, are left for the final day, and that's where we find ourselves right now. And we're delighted to have the minority leader in the Senate joining us today, Luz Escamilla, and also, of course, the Senate President, Stuart Adams. Mr. President, let's talk about this session. You know, when we were chatting prior to going on the air, you said you used the term record session several times. Talk about why this is a record session.
Well, it's been a record. You talked about the number of bills, but also it's a record session for education. We usually fund education at 2 or 3% of WPU, the weighted pupil unit. This year, when you total it all up, 13%. And then if you add on the one time, 18.5% WPU. Never before in the history of the state, record-breaking spending for education. Talk about infrastructure, you talk about water, you talk about housing. All of them have been record-setting. And it's just great to be in Utah.
Let's talk with Senator Escamilla about this. Your view on the session and the record nature of it.
You know, it's been, I think, a great session in terms of our spending on education. I can say that I'm joining the president on this piece. It's record and it's historical. So that's great. I think our teachers are feeling that, and I hope, you know, obviously our schools know of that. We, you know, may have some disagreements on some of the process pieces related to the earmark, and obviously that's going to be reflecting on the vote. But empowering the public to take action, I think it's important. So it will go to the ballot for them to you know, bring consensus to that on the 2024 ballot. We've done great things on healthcare as well, and I hardly ever talk about, you know, what it means to be in the minority party and get things passed, but you know, the president has been a great supporter and just really working with, in this case with me, for the last couple of years on a bill that will bring more coverage for children. And sometimes that doesn't get covered a lot because it's not maybe as controversial or as other things, but you know, that was a whole consensus process. It took years to get us there. But we can say that today that we have more coverage for more kids in the state of Utah. We also have done a lot with regards to water. We did some stuff regarding emission reductions. So, you know, some great things are corrections now is moving some of the medical care within the Department of Corrections is going to Health and Human Services, and we put some safeguards in there. Law enforcement, we did more with regards to transparency and accountability with our police officers, and all of them coming together. It takes years sometimes to get to good public policy, and I think this year we'll see some of that good stuff as well.
All three of us have watched politics up here for a long time from different vantage points, of course. But I've always been interested in the top 10 most pressing issues based on what the public believes. And boy, over the years, I mean, it's gone from crime and things like that, and education has always been up in the top, to all of a sudden we're talking air quality, we're talking water. And President Adams, you were talking about the infrastructure efforts this time, which certainly includes water and the Great Salt Lake.
Well, you know, Utah has the best economy in the nation. We have the lowest unemployment rate. And with that, we also have the fastest growing population. In the last census, Utah was the fastest growing state in the nation. But that causes some problems, especially in infrastructure, housing, and water. This year, we will spend, again, another record year, over $2 billion on infrastructure. We love our quality of life here. We want to maintain mobility. We want to maintain what we love about Utah. And so in order to do that, we have to focus, again, on infrastructure. And then as you look at housing prices, because of that great economy, have also been almost unattainable. $200 million, again, a record amount of money spent on housing. I actually sponsored a bill. I'm really concerned that we're losing that middle class, that we're having renters and landlords, and we don't have the pride of home ownership. In America, we believe in home ownership. And in Utah, we believe in home ownership. So I actually sponsored a bill that allowed $20,000 to be used for first home buyers, new construction, creating new product for a home buyer to actually buy a home. We're trying to solve these problems, and I'm confident we will solve these problems. Again, another record-breaking year.
This is something that many Utahns don't fully appreciate. They talk about the Californians that are moving here, people from Phoenix and elsewhere, but the vast majority, with just a few anomalies, 2021 was a bit of an anomaly, but the vast majority of our growth, it's our kids, it's our grandkids. So this housing issue that the president has already talked about, Luz, it is very, very important.
Absolutely. I think housing and making sure our children, we call them the kiddos, right? That's the new word we're using a lot. But it's truly about building a good future for them. And I think on all of that we agree. But there's also stuff where, we think we can certainly slow down on some of the message stuff that's out there that we want to make sure our schools feel a lot of under attack. And I really applaud the Senate and obviously under the leadership of the president, to slow down some of those messages, some bills that were very, very strong messages that I think we need more consensus building. Some of them related to diversity, equity, and inclusion in higher ed. All of that stuff happening in the Senate. So, and I'm not saying that because I'm in the Senate, but truly, I think the fact that we have a Senate with many more members that have been there for a long time, I really think that's going to be helpful. It's concerning as a minority party. We feel there's a lot of attack on the areas of race, ethnicity, gender, and we want to slow down that process. We want to be the state that brings a Utah way of bringing consensus. So we're looking forward to working because there's more to do, obviously, after this.
Over the years, I've heard several governors who have asked legislators to maybe not be quite so zealous with the bills, to really filter them down. If there are message bills, really rethink them. Is that getting to be under control? As I mentioned, I've heard at least 3-4 governors talk about that, boy, try to keep the number of the bills down. Keep them the big issues that we need to focus on, and the message bills, their words, not mine, tend to bog us down.
Yeah, they do, but we've done a good job of that. If not only is it record year for the spending, but we think we've managed our affairs well here. We came out. We began with a very, very active first few weeks of the session. We have managed the session well, and I think for the most part, we have done a great job with the policy issues. Utah has done some phenomenal things. We just passed an adoption bill that allows for religious institutions to be able to get back in the adoption business, supported by the LGBTQ population also. A phenomenal consensus bill. We passed a conversion therapy bill, again consensus bill. Utah's done things that no other state in the nation's doing. And again, those message bills, I think we're finding a way to have consensus with many of them. And I'm really proud of the work we've done this session.
This has been a great conversation with both of you. Luz, I've got about 15 seconds. I'd like to give you a final word, too.
Just to know that, I think part of this balance is having the minority party participate, and we've always felt that we have an opportunity to at least have a conversation, and there's fairness on that process, and we want to continue working that way.
Senator Escamilla, thank you so much. And President Adams, thank you for joining us today on Sunday Edition. We'll continue the program from Utah's Capitol Hill. Sunday Edition is again coming to you from Capitol Hill, and we so appreciate our legislators and everybody up here on the Hill working with us. And this is being recorded on Friday, so we're still in the hive of activity, and I so appreciate the Speaker of the House and the Minority Leader of the House joining us, Angela Romero, and also, Brad Wilson. And perhaps, Speaker, we can chat with you first. Just overall, how are you feeling about this session? You've been on the Hill quite a while now.
I have been here a bit, Doug, and I've seen a lot of sessions come and go without any exaggeration. This is the most consequential session that I've seen a legislature undertake in decades, and it's for a variety of reasons, but the impact of what we're doing up here is going to be felt by our kids and grandkids, and you can look back to this year and track it to here.
I've been hearing, Representative Romero, I've heard that from several people. This is one of the most impactful, one of the most important legislative sessions we've had in a long time, if not in memory. Why is that, do you think? Is Utah simply coming of age? Is it a matter of just the budgets we're dealing with or the challenges? Why is this so significant?
I think it's the challenges, as the speaker mentioned. You know, we were talking about the Great Salt Lake, we're talking about education, we're talking about earmarks, tax cuts. The speaker and I may not agree on the direction we're going, but definitely it's been a very memorable session as long as I can remember being up here as well.
For you personally, and representing your constituents and within your caucus, what has been the best thing that's happened on Utah's Capitol Hill so far? And what, in your opinion, is the most concerning?
I think the best thing that happened is with our new leadership team. I think you saw cooperation with the majority and the minority caucuses and us working together. Representative Owens received $20 million to do some funding for wildlife and to make sure they're not getting hit when they're crossing the road. And so you'll see a lot of those things like the Great Salt Lake that we agree on. But I also think you'll see a different approach when it comes to education and how to fund education in the future from the different sides.
Mr. Speaker, the same question for you. Most consequential, the thing that you're most pleased about, and what is concerning to you?
It is really hard to pin one thing down as the most impactful, but let me just start by saying that we have made the biggest investment in public education this year in the state's history. There's going to be a sizable, noticeable raise for teachers this year, and that's going to be a game changer for our public education system, and we're doing that at the same time as we're giving Utah taxpayers about a $750 million tax cut. And so those two things oftentimes don't go together at the same time. But in a state like ours that is as prosperous as it is, and it's growing at the rate that it is, it affords us the ability to make those kinds of big decisions. When I think about the challenges that the state faces, one of the things that's still weighing heavily over the state that, quite frankly, the state can only do so much about is what's happening with rulemaking in Washington, D.C. relative to energy policy. We still face in this state, in spite of all the efforts we've done this session trying to push back on it, we still face in this state the federal government coming in and shutting down our base power load in this state to be able to keep our lights on. So we're working and doing everything we can here to push back on that. But all of the good that's being done here is remarkable, but there are still some things we've got to work on.
Representative Romero, let's talk a little bit. I know education is a passion for all of us, but certainly for you and for your caucus. And the earmarks and different things, tax cuts that have come this year that the Speaker has mentioned, how do you feel about education and how it has fared this year?
I feel like education has fared well, and that's where we'll agree, giving teachers raises and, of course, focusing on the future. But the way we've approached it, some might call it Washington politics here happening in Utah. And you'll see that House Democrats, Senate Democrats voted against the earmark and putting that with tax cuts and everything. It's not that we don't support reducing eliminating the sales tax on food or providing people with a tax break, but we felt like those should have been separate bills.
We have just a second left in this segment, and just a final quick thought on this session for you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, we're very blessed to live in this state, and it's not lost on any of us, the health of the state of Utah and what's going on here. We do have challenges, but the way that lawmakers have stood up and addressed them, another massive amount of funding for water conservation and preserving the Great Salt Lake. We've made more progress this session in terms of housing affordability so that our kids and grandkids can afford a house down the road. The list just goes on and on of things that we've accomplished. And I think that the benefit of a citizen legislature where people come up here, take time away from their real lives, serve for 7 weeks, and then go back to live with the results of what they've done. We're one of the last states in the country, Doug, that does it this way, and it's also why we're such a great state.
Representative Romero, Minority Leader Romero, your thoughts, just some final thoughts on this session.
I would agree with the Speaker when it comes to affordable housing and focusing on water conservation. We're in tune there. The other thing that hasn't been really discussed is domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, and we've invested a lot of money in doing some prevention and supporting our domestic violence shelters. So as the Speaker mentioned, there are a lot of things, like probably 85 to 95% of the things we agree on. There's those certain different shifts when it comes to policy. But overall, I think it's been a great session, and I look forward to working with the Speaker in the coming session.
Majority Leader Schultz is going to join us next, and just one of the issues we're going to focus on with him will be the new Utah state flag. So if I could just get a real quick thought on the new flag, and I understand in 2024 on Flag Day it's official, but your thoughts quickly.
I didn't really think about the flag as much as other people did. My constituents were fine with whatever, but I like the new flag. I feel like the new flag's more inclusive of all people who live here in Utah. We can't forget there were people here before the pioneers came, which are some of my ancestors, and so I feel like this new flag is a representation of our state.
I, too, like the new Utah state flag. Are you going to make it unanimous here?
I supported the flag. I think what's happened is pretty remarkable. We actually have our historic flag, which is the current flag we use, and we have a new flag. And so people can pick which one they want to use and which one they want to honor and maybe go back and forth. It's going to be a great addition to our state.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. House Minority Leader, thank you for joining us today on Sunday Edition. And as I already mentioned, we'll be talking with Representative Mike Schultz. That's coming up next. And welcome back to Sunday Edition, coming to you from Utah's Capitol Hill. Obviously, of course, this program was recorded on Friday when a lot of activity was still going on. And Representative Schultz is here with us, and, of course, the Majority Leader in the House. And you actually were delayed just a second because you were debating a bill, an earmark bill. Tell us about it.
Thanks, Doug. First off, it's an honor to be with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity. We've done some amazing things this session. I think the biggest out of any other session in modern history. There's been some big policy decisions and changes moving forward and to move the state forward in a positive direction. One of those is the constitutional earmark in regards to income tax fund versus general fund, sales tax fund. So there's been a big debate and a big push on sales tax on food, right? I mean, that's most of the citizens don't know and realize we can't remove the sales tax on food without opening up the income tax further, because income tax doesn't fund most of government. It funds some of education, or most of education, sorry, and some social service programs, but that's it, really. On the income tax fund, and then the sales tax fund has to fund all areas of government, and so this is really where the debate started. And so right now we just passed the bill with 57 votes in the House to let the voters decide. Do you want the sales tax removed from food? And if you do, then we need to open up the constitutional earmark on the income tax fund. And so that's what it is. It's something that will go to the ballot. The voters will get to make that decision. We have the money budgeted in our tax cut bill to actually fund that if the voters make that decision.
Let's assume for a moment that does go forward. The governor signs it. When would it actually be on the ballot? 2024?
2024, yes. And we've got most of the education community stakeholder groups on board with this. We're still working with a few others. We're committed to continue working with those other groups throughout the session. Nobody's really opposed to it yet at this point, and most people are in support of it. But, we still got some work to do to bring people together, and we're committed to doing that, yeah. So 2024.
It'll be very interesting to see, assuming that does go forward, what the people in Utah have to say about that. Let's talk about education. How closely is this tied? And there are some in education who are concerned about anything that changes the old factor that, as you already mentioned, income tax goes to education.
Yeah. Well, the problem is it's not dedicated. It's just one of the things that can be spent. Public education can be spent on, and so there's all sorts of flexibility already inside that on what it can be spent on. So it really doesn't do a whole lot for education funding. And so the bigger thing is what can we do to guarantee funding to education? And so that's where most of the education communities come together to support. And of course, there's some outs there if we don't have the revenue, as there should be, right? I mean, you can't make guarantees that you can't keep. So that's why the majority of the education communities come on board. But Doug, this has been the biggest year for education funding in the state's history. Monumental numbers. It's a commitment that we're made, and we gave the parents a little more freedom and options in how their kids are educated to making the decisions. And it came with that a huge increase in teacher salary. So it's been a huge year in terms of funding for public education.
Do you think we're going to see more, and the governor actually referred to this, where there are controversial things? You know, one group wanting big increases for teachers, but really not big fans of vouchers at all, or that type of a thing. The other side, you know, yeah, I would like to see the teachers make more, but we're really interested in vouchers. Well, you marry the two together, and it makes it a little tough.
Well, I think it actually is beneficial, because what we heard last year when we tried the scholarships for parents to be able to use their education dollars how they best see fit for their kids was that you're going to hurt public education. You're going to hurt public education. So we wanted to make a commitment to public education, say, no, this isn't about hurting public education. We want to make public education actually better and stronger. And so we had $60 million for school scholarships that the parents get to use, set aside, and $200 million in teacher pay increases. So toward public education. So that's our commitment to public education.
We're going to wrap up our segment and wrap up the program on a new state flag. I'm assuming that's going to go forward. I'm assuming, well, it already has, but the governor will actually sign it. So when will we be flying our new Utah state flag?
Well, I will be flying our new state flag this weekend, but it does not become official until Flag Day, March 9th of 2024. So that's when it becomes official, but I already know the sales are through the roof. It's a popular design. There are some people that don't like it, and that's okay. We kept the state flag and actually made it a more revered position, called it the historical state flag. And so people can fly whichever flag, either the old state flag that's now the historical flag or the new state flag.
I remember when you showed me a model of the flag but had the texturing in it, that image. And if anybody had any doubts about what everything is represented, when you actually see it with the texture, more like a painting than a flag, it is remarkable. We unfortunately are out of time. Thank you for chatting with us. I know this is a very busy day on Capitol Hill, and we'll let you get back to work.
Thanks, Doug. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Mike Schultz, with us. And that does it for Sunday Edition. Thank you so much for being part of it. Thanks to all of our legislators who helped us put this program together, those up here, of course, at the Capitol, and music and the spoken word. That's coming up next.